Recently, Governor Rauner announced he would be taking his first foreign trade mission, going to China and Japan. Next, from the Farm Progress Show in Decatur, we talk with Mark Albertson of the Soybean Growers Association and hear how soybean has become one of the largest Illinois exports to Asian markets. This runs about 10 minutes. Mark Albertson, thanks for joining us on the Illinois channel as we are here at the Farm Progress Show in Decatur, Illinois. For those who don't know, this is a big agricultural show, and it's every other year here in Decatur, so lucky for us that we could connect with you. And can you tell us what are the issues, what are you looking at with the Soybean Association?
Right, well, you know, Illinois is the largest soy producer in the U.S., and it's a big part of our economy. And so we're here today talking about the importance of soy, talking to farmers about where their soy goes, because everyone knows that they deliver their soy to the elevator, but where does it go after that? Well, in Illinois, we export a lot of our soy. You know, we're the fourth largest hog producing state, but we still have a lot of soy left over after we feed all those pigs. And some of our biggest markets are China. And China buys about 25% of all the soy that's grown in the U.S. Mexico is also a top consumer of our soy. So international trade is very important to us. Free trade is very important. Having all the free trade agreements is very important. And a little known fact, in Illinois, our second biggest export of all the things that we export is soybeans. And so it's very important to us.
And that's an interesting point, because I think a lot of people in Illinois are not aware what an exporter on a variety of products that Illinois is. China, you mentioned, and I think you said that's 25% of all of our production is going to China. Is that right?
That's correct.
How long has that been true, and to what extent does the Chinese market continue to grow?
Well, the Chinese market is growing all the time. About 15 or 20 years ago, China was actually a net exporter, and we were competing with them on the international stage, selling our soybeans. And now China has become the world's biggest soybean importer by far. They import 25% of our soybeans, and they import soybeans from South America as well, Brazil and Argentina. So we're competing with our fellow farmers from around the world. One of the advantages we have in Illinois in particular is our infrastructure. We have the Illinois River, we have the Mississippi River, and we have lots of railroads. You know, the railroads all intersect in Illinois, especially up around the Chicago area. That's a huge advantage that we have. It's important that we maintain our infrastructure, otherwise we'll lose that advantage and we'll lose some of those key markets.
I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the major problems we're facing is infrastructure on the Mississippi River and the need to rebuild the locks and dams that we make as a nation billions of dollars in exports, and yet so many of those locks and dams were built 70 years ago or more. I believe our Illinois congressional delegation is trying to get the financing to rebuild some of those. Is the Illinois Soybean Association, and I would imagine other associations like the Coal Association, the Corn Growers Association, everyone's using those locks and dams. Are you working it all together to raise this as an issue in Congress and now perhaps with the new Trump administration?
Right, absolutely. We're always raising the issue with Congress. The Trump administration already has had some events at locks and dams trying to raise the awareness. And most of our members of Congress understand it. It's just a matter of making it a priority so that we can put our investment dollars where it really counts. You know, several years ago we did some investment in our infrastructure, shovel-ready projects. Somehow the locks and dams missed that opportunity, and it's really a shame, because our farmers count on that, the Illinois economy counts on that, and that's one of the few things that keep us competitive against South America and other folks.
So you already mentioned that one of the primary uses for soybeans are feeding animal feed, but you're developing some other sidebar markets. I think here and there, I know ADM in the past has tried to develop some food products for human consumption, soy burgers and the like, but also soy diesel is somewhat where does that fit in the marketing and the future plans for the Soybean Association?
Right. Well, soy biodiesel is very important. We have a lot of competing oils. There's corn oil, olive oil, and most of that's used for food. But what happens when you have too much oil? Well, that's where biodiesel comes in. When we produce too much oil, we have to get rid of it somehow. 20% of a soybean is soybean oil, and it actually is an excellent fuel for diesel trucks because it reduces air emissions. On top of that, it's also something that's made here in America, and we don't rely on the Middle East or other countries for biodiesel. So it's a great story, and it's great for the environment, and it's great for farmers.
I would guess at this point it's still a relatively, would I be correct in saying it's a relatively small part of the overall consumption of soybeans, or no?
Well, yeah, I mean, when you think about the fact that 20% of the soybeans contain oil, and about 20% of that oil gets used for biodiesel, that's really only 4% of our production. 20% of 20% is about 4%, but it's an important 4%. If we lost the biodiesel market, then soybean prices would really suffer. Right now, soybean prices are not very high anyway. So we really count on that biodiesel market in order to keep farming to be profitable.
I won't give you much longer, and I meant to ask you before, when you talk about the amount of exports that we are doing, do you happen to know a dollar amount? I mean, I think sometimes people are surprised when they hear how much money is being transferred from our fields to sales overseas.
Yeah, so here in Illinois, we produce about 600 million bushels, and about half of those go to the international marketplace, and the prices fluctuate. So if soybeans are about $10 a bushel or something like that, you can kind of do the math and figure out how much of that gets exported overseas.
And lastly, as far as working, we talked about the Trump administration on infrastructure. Is there any initiatives that you're working on within the state, working with the Rauner administration or through the Department of Ag? What's on your legislative list of wants and desires?
Yeah, well, we're always working with the Illinois Department of Ag. For one thing, the Department of Weights and Measures is through the Department of Ag, and they maintain and ensure that we have good fuel quality. So when it comes to biodiesel, they make sure that the fuel stations are selling what they say they're selling, and not blends that are different than what they're required to sell. But yeah, we have a lot of priorities, legislative priorities, and exports again is one of the top ones. We might be doing some trade delegations, working with the state of Illinois to help us with that, to ensure that we still have NAFTA and other types of free trade agreements.
Well, Mark Albertson, we appreciate you taking the time to speak with us, and thank you for sharing your ideas.
All right, thank you very much.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.